Understanding your needs and challenges, what makes your future safer and more successful, that is what engages us. That's what we are best at. To be able to foresee or prevent what may happen, the complexity and relationship between various factors in the event of an incident must be understood. At Alandia Loss Prevention, we consider every eventuality with a human perspective. We are a well-groomed team with knowledge in human factors, global shipping, ship management, and marine insurance. Alandia is a marine insurance entrepreneur with large resources and extensive expertise. We provide you with precise and accurate analyses. On a solid foundation, with more than 80 years of experience in marine insurance, our client promise is to meet the highest level of risk management needs.
Hi everybody, and welcome to our new webinar, Lessons Learned. We are going to have this webinar every second month with a new topic and a new panel. In this webinar, we will discuss what have happened, why these incidents occur, and the most important, what have we learned? Today's topic is ice navigation, and we have our expert panel here. And the panel consists of Sten Rosenqvist, Safety Manager at Eckerö Line, Niklas Gustafsson, Captain on Finlandia at Eckerö Line, Thomas Friis, Development Manager at VG Shipping, and Hans Björkestam, Safety and Environment Manager at ESL Shipping. And this panel will be moderated by our own Martti Simojoki, Loss Prevention Manager at Alandia. If you listeners have any questions, you can write them in the Q&A form down below, and we will take your questions in the end of this webinar. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Right, it's a great pleasure to have this expert panel here with us this afternoon, and to know who we are and what we are going to present, and what is the wealth of knowledge that is present here. I suggest that we take a round table and looking at the small screens. If you start with the Thomas. So happy to have you here. Welcome, and please tell you a little bit about your background and what you would like to discuss and contribute this afternoon.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Martti. Yes, Thomas Friis at VG Shipping here in Turku, Finland. My background is a master mariner, being sailing for an active 10 years as an officer on board passenger and cargo vessels, then another 4 years actually as a teacher at the University of Applied Science Novia here in Turku also, and then moved over to the shipping business and been here also as safety and environment and DPA at VG Shipping, and now I'm in charge of some development plans for our shipping company for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And Sten?
Yes, thank you for taking part in this. Sten Rosenqvist is my name, and I'm also a master mariner as the background, and I have also been active serving on the ships. Have a background in Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics and Atlantic Container Line, and have been here in Eckerö Group since 2012 as safety manager. So in my role, I'm responsible for the ISM system and also taking care of all the safety and nautical areas here at the company. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with Martti back in Wallenius days a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Sten. Nicholas?
Yes, my name is Niklas and Master Mariner as well. Been working at sea since 1984. First in general cargo ships, ro-ro ships, and mostly on cruise ships. I have about 20 years of experience as captain on cruise ships. Been the latest 15 years in Baltic Sea trade, but before that I've been on international cruise ships. I, for example, met in Alaska with cruise ships. And in my present work, I just changed to a passenger ferry. So I have only 2 weeks from experience from that. That's not much. And yeah, that's about me.
Thank you, and welcome to our webinar.
Thank you.
And now I would like to pass the ball to Hans. I suppose we are not going to hear another Master Mariner. What are you going to? Where are you looking the world at?
Yeah, my background is naval architect, and started my career, started with my Master of Science thesis, where I measured forces on an open and ducted propeller, and there was actually my first experience of close call when we lifted up the trawler that we tested. The duct was almost gone, so we were in luck that we didn't continue the tests for more than we did. Then I worked some time for Wärtsilä Arctic and visited a couple of times the Canadian Arctic on supply vessels there, and did some full-scale and ice basin testing there. After which I went to Lloyd's Register for some, 11 years, and had some close-up inspections of ice damages that occurred during the 90s. And now I've been working, 6 years at ESL Shipping, and every now and then we have some ice incidents, which we can look into a bit more in detail later on.
Okay, thank you and welcome, and really interesting to hear a little bit different background and a little bit maybe more scientific background on the ice navigation part. Okay, the first easy question: are we going to get an icy winter this year? What does the panel? Do we know that already, or what is your expectation? Anyone can start.
Well, I think at least somewhere in Finland we will have some ice. With these temperatures right now, it doesn't look like we will have much ice in the south part, but for sure, for the ships trading in the northern part, there will be ice, definitely.
Okay, very good. Anyone else who dares to forecast the coming ice winter?
Well,
I guess
based on the squirrels, it will not be a very hard winter.
Go, Nicholas.
Yes, I expect the Gulf of Finland to be pretty easy this winter. We will see.
Yeah, very good. And that's having this kind of a panel. It's kind of a natural that we have very much focus on the Bay of Bothnia, Gulf of Bothnia, and the Gulf of Finland. But as everybody know, and it's already mentioned that we have other parts in the world, the Arctics, the expedition cruises are increasing, and they are totally different challenges when it comes to ice navigation, that we are more or less very much spoiled with a very good infrastructure and very good cooperation between different countries around the Baltic Sea when it comes to ice breaking and assistance and systems. Good. Then what would you like to bring on the table this afternoon? We are going to talk about the lessons learned something that went wrong, maybe. It doesn't need to have to go wrong, but something that happened. And we learned from the lesson and also implemented in the company system or the ISM, as what you like. Who would like to start on that one? It doesn't have to be right now. It could be an older incident or something that you're comfortable sharing with the panel and our guests.
Well, I could start. I'd look back at the incident reports from the last 6 years, and I found 7 reported ice-related cases, which to some extent show that we don't learn every time from the lessons that we should. We have a couple of incidents where we had broken fire pipelines because somebody forgot to drain before we experienced cold temperatures. That is kind of a natural thing that you should do, but you tend to forget. We had also a similar case, which more is a structural case. I think it was Kumbula that was up in Sabetta in the Arctic, and we experienced some -40 degrees, and that led to a broken ballast water pipe in a void space because it had been filled a bit too high, the ballast water tank, and that made the pipe to break. One case where we had a, shall we say, ice transit damage was, or let's say that we think it was, we had a hole in the forepeak tank that was most likely caused by hitting an ice floe or something hard that was inside the ice. We don't really know when it happened. We just detected that there was a hole in the forepeak tank. And other than that, we have had some small incidents with touching the quayside because of too much ice in the port. And one case where we had a hole in the bow because of a collision with the assisting icebreaker that suddenly stopped. Those are kind of typical, also going back to my time at Lloyd's Register. The damages that I experienced or inspected at that time were quite a few holes in the bow because of a collision with the assisting icebreaker. Then one case I remember where we had a rudder stock that got twisted because of going astern with the rudder turned, something that again you should know, but in this case they had forgotten. One case we had also a bulb damage where it was a say flag from southern parts of the world, and they didn't ballast the ship deep enough, so going with too much speed in ice conditions. But those are kind of what we have seen lately, and I would say based on what I saw at Lloyd's, the amount of damages, ice damages, have gone down during the years. I don't know if you at Lalandia see the same.
Yeah, it tends to agree with the trend. And is there anything that in your company or your previous companies, Lloyd's, for example, that like a lesson learned that this is what we keep seeing, and now we learned it and you implement it in the system and try to ensure that it doesn't recur exactly the same way as it happened first time?
Well, people tend to forget. So you remember the case for a couple of years, you have it in your procedures, yes. but then you forget like the draining, and then you have the issue once again. But of course, the more we have instructions and such, the more there is a likelihood that we don't see the reoccurrence of the issues. And of course, the Polar Code that has come into force will also, I believe, bring it down, because there's quite a lot of sharing of manuals or manual templates and procedures and so on through that. So I think that through that we will see less and less incidents.
Okay, we count on that. Thank you, Hans. The same question, who would like to go next, Thomas, then, or Nicholas? Something you would like to bring on table, a lesson learned?
Yes, Martti, Thomas. Yes, we had quite a severe accident in March 2018, where one of our vessels was being towed by an icebreaker in the Gulf of Bothnia. The icebreaker was quite rapidly stuck in ice, and the third vessel in the convoy, loaded with heavy steel cargo, they weren't able to stop their vessel, and with a speed of almost 8 knots, they ran into the stern of our vessel. And in looking back now, we are really lucky that the damage was basically steel, no mechanical, and the ship stayed afloat. But of course, a fair bit of costs, and for us, the ship that run into our stern, of course, they got a hole in the forepeak. But then we came to the question of liability and responsibility of how should vessels be operated in a situation where we are assisted by icebreakers. So, and this has just been in court in Sweden, and the first ruling was that the vessel that was behind us, they were the cause of the accident. So we come to the liability question of who is responsible of their navigation of the ship. So, but I can tell you more about that, and maybe I will give the word to Sten or Niklas here in meanwhile.
Is there, just before we go to Sten and Niklas, is there anything so far that you have already implemented or you're going to implement in your ISM when it comes to winter navigation and icebreaker assistance?
We have not implemented yet anything. I do know that we have had discussions with our masters in our company, and also internal discussions about basically winter navigation procedures for our company. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Thomas.
A quick comment there. The Polar Code requires a brake light, which we don't use in the Baltic. But that could be a way of avoiding similar.
Hasse, in this situation, we do have a brake light. Actually, the icebreakers, they are entitled to lit 2 red lights in case they are stuck in ice. But in this situation, the ship behind us, they were so close that even they got an order to slow down and to stop, but still they run into our stern with 7.8 knots.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Sten and or Niklas, do you have some? What would you like to share?
Okay, yes, from our side, I'm let's say responsible for the incident reports, but honestly, we have not had much ice related incidents during the last few years. So I think a lot of that is due to the very mild winters, of course. But when I listen to Thomas' experience here, I can mention at least one thing that we, let's say, regularly take care of round about this time of the year. That is to ensure that we have a list of direct numbers between the ferries in the traffic in the Gulf of Finland and between Sweden and Finland, which is circulated among the companies between Eckerö Line, Tallink-Silja, Viking Line, and so on. And that list is updated and ensure that the numbers are up to date, so that the captains and the commands on the bridge can contact the ships directly by telephone or via satellite numbers, bridge to bridge, which is really important when you are navigating in the ice channels, and there might be some situations where you quickly have to get in touch with the other ship ahead or behind you.
That sounds like informal information sharing and cooperation, and it sounds very, very nice. Something from Niklas' horizon.
From the last 15 years, where I've been working now on this cruise ship that belongs to Eckerö, I can only recall one incident, and it was a slightly twisted ISPS fence in port of Mariehamn when we reversed in quite heavy ice condition. But then also delay. We had a situation some years ago when the traffic was stopped outside the Swedish coast, which then of course prevented us, we weren't stuck there, but it prevented us going out there. And to avoid then of course loss of income, then we decided to do pilot licenses, so we are prepared to use other fairways. Before we had only pilot license in one fairway, and we hadn't even thought about that the traffic would even stop in that fairway. So we took a lesson learned there, and we took some pilot license, so it wouldn't, the thing that the temporary stop then due to ice condition in that fairway wouldn't affect us then for our business, because a few days without doing the cruises we would lose quite a lot of money. And further than that, I can only remember from further earlier in my career, there has been few that doesn't have exactly to do with the navigation in ice, but cargo handling and thing in ice, icy condition, and it's a lot of loss of, or not a lot, but there has been loss of hire and delays, of course, which could of course be avoided if you are well prepared.
Okay, thank you very much. Then the next question for the panel, what do you consider the biggest challenge when taking control of the risks in ice navigation? Is there something, what are the things that you can control and what are the things that you can't control?
Well, I think I'll start. I'll take the easy one. As we have noticed, the ice and the winters, they have become more and more mild, which means also that the experience of navigation in ice is getting less and less. Back in the 90s and a bit later on also, I mean, it was all Scandinavian ships would be, it was natural that everybody on board had been navigating in ice and had ice experience, and also, I mean, also of winter experience, like the water pipes that Hasse was talking about. Now we're starting to become in that situation that the winters here in the southern Finland, they're quite mild. It doesn't come naturally anymore, and this is in how I see it. It's a challenge to actually get this knowledge from the experience that we had.
And could you elaborate a bit more that how do we maintain this know-how and knowledge, and how do we pass it on to next generation? And I also think that if we broaden our horizon a little bit more, that we have lots of other areas with, like the expedition cruises, St. Lawrence River, northern Canada, parts that or the Northern Sea Route with the Yamal project. I think that it's very important that to be competitive and also sustainable in future, that we somehow need to maintain the knowledge and know-how, and if possible increase it. And do you know, or could you elaborate a bit more that how this could be done? And I mean, clearly we have had it, and now you say that the experience is getting less.
Yeah, I mean, yes, as you, Martti, said, there is a need for experience and knowledge in winter navigation. We are getting new markets, and as you said, the northern routes and so on, and Canada, northern USA, and so on. I do think that this is something that could be maintained from also already from the training perspective. Of course I do know that the Polar Code trainings courses are being developed since we got the Polar Code, and maybe we could just raise the bar here in this area and try to make it even more compulsory in a wider concept. That's maybe one possibility.
Okay, thank you. And who would like to go next?
Yes, I can share some ideas about this. I think this I've not been involved very much lately in the training and academia, but when I studied here in Mariehamn to Master Mariner, we spent 1 week actually on board an icebreaker. One of the senior teachers took us to I think it was Kemi or somewhere up far north, and we went on board one of the Finnish icebreaker for a whole week to study how to navigate and how to do the towing, etc., and study it more or less hands-on on an icebreaker in service with experienced captains and officers, and that was a very good experience. And that is also, I think, to see that in real life, or actually on board an icebreaker in ice and doing assistance to other ships, gives you an let's say insight and experience, and that is something that you will take with you during the whole career, more or less. And it's easier to refresh knowledges and competences if you have seen it in reality. So I think that could be one key to keep up the knowledge and motivation among seafarers during these mild winters.
Yeah, I suppose that's a challenge that you talk about winter and ice navigation, but you don't see any winter and ice, and how to keep up the interest and also the skills. I mean, being on an icebreaker, as you said, it's one thing that you have lots of power, or the vessels that Niklas is representing, you have lots of power that you have easier to cope with ice. But when you have vessels that you barely can cope with, then it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, and it's a very specialized area, and it's a different terminology, and it's a very, say, focused and niched expertise, and it's good to see it in action in real life.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course, like Sten said, that there must be, and it can be cooperated, like Sten said, in your teaching. I mean, previously I was a deckhand on a ship in the 80s, and there was hand steering, so you were taken up as a helmsman there. You were actually steering the ship on captain's order, officer's order. You listened to the radio traffic, you could follow, you learned all the time. Then you became a third officer, and you didn't take on so many responsibilities. You got a little bit more. You perhaps kept up the radio traffic, and in easier conditions you were allowed to drive yourself. And nowadays, with the mild winters, then these opportunities doesn't come up much. The school system has also changed. You probably come in slightly easier into an officer's career. So then you need something else, and one thing is, like Sten said, you get the opportunity to go on an icebreaker. You might need different courses and things like this, but in order to navigate safely, you need to obtain the skill from somewhere, and we just have to look on new ways of doing it.
What would that be? I mean, I mean, if we think here that we have 10 more mild winters, and all the guys that once knew it are probably closer to the retirement, and we might be in a situation. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny here, but it's a reality that if we don't find a way to maintain the skill sets and the knowledge and the know-how, that we might actually be in a real problem. That if we get back in a period of time that we have so-called normal winters again, and we have a totally new generation that have no whatsoever skills, practical skill sets for winter navigation.
Of course, it's a threat. Let's take the opportunity now then when we have the winters and teach our younger generations of deck officers and let them have the chance, for example, like Sten said, to go on an icebreaker and so on. It might be that we as deck officers might be divided, that you know, there's some of us that gain the experience, and I don't know if then it's some sort of like the polar code that you get a certificate that you have the skill to go in ice, and some that concentrate on doing navigating somewhere else. It's the way probably that this seafaring has become now. Let's say you go on tanker ships, you get a lot of courses and experience on tanker ships, and this might also be a division then amongst us then. I don't know. It might be a future.
Yeah, and then in many companies we have the reality that not all the officers or even the captain is from Scandinavia or other cold climates, that it can be very international, and they are not born with snow and winter, and I think then it's even more real that we should find as an industry a way how to make sure that the knowledge and the know-how is in the right hands and applied the right and correct way.
Oh, it's up to us to make ourselves competitive in the market, and yeah.
I do agree that it is a risk that we see more and more people who don't have the hands-on experience on what it is to put your hand on cold metal and get stuck, and also the maneuvering in ice and such. I've been a bit involved in the Polar Code, and there are courses held in the Mediterranean where you just theoretically go through what the cold climate is and what is needed for ice navigation, and then you get a certificate. The good thing with that is that such people, they don't trust themselves, so they would obey the orders from an icebreaker much better than our stubborn Finnish guys who know what to do and don't obey the orders. So it's a risk both ways.
Yeah, and I mean, is there any specific case, or would you like to elaborate more that when, or are you speaking purely theoretically that there would be a situation that you ignore what the icebreaker says?
I have, well, when I worked for Vark, I was on board icebreakers quite a lot, and there were some arguments between the masters on the ship, icebreaker, and the ship that was to be assisted, and it was always the Finnish ships that had different opinions. So I think that if you know kind of too much, you have too much experience, you might not be ready to obey the orders, do what is said to you, and that in itself is of course a risk. But then again, the risk when you don't have the hands-on experience is that you don't understand it. Water in a pipe will freeze. You don't understand that a rudder hitting the ice will, or the rudder stock will twist when you hit the ice going astern and such things. And so things like which are built in the people who have the hands-on experience, they are things that people who have the theoretical knowledge don't remember always. So yeah, risks in both too much experience and in too little experience.
Yeah. Thomas, you mentioned the recent case you had, and there was an icebreaker involved. Would you like to elaborate a bit what Hasse mentioned here, that obeying icebreaker orders or not obeying, and if you want to share, I think I know that you have some interesting things from your end.
Yes, thank you. We do have to, again, who is in final, who has the final responsibility of a ship? Yes, it is the master on board his own vessel. So instructions given from an icebreaker, they are meant as instructions and advice for the cooperation between the icebreaker and the vessel who needs assistance. And this is also now, how shall I say, the view of the court, which means that the master on board his vessel must always navigate the ship in a safe way. And if any kind of instruction or advice is given from the icebreaker, and for the sake of having a convoy on the movement, if those advices are not in view of the safety of the assisted vessel, this must be communicated and opened up. So I think this would be the most important, what should I say, point from this whole case that we have been involved in, and it's possible it's not the final verdict yet, but a captain cannot say that he was just following orders from the icebreaker and he was not able to do anything. Then he has not been navigating in a safe manner. So that is also the view that we had in this case, that when our ship is running as a sandwich between an icebreaker and a cargo vessel, our bow was damaged, and the stern, it was like somebody had cut with a cake, a piece of cake from the stern. It was horrible, and luckily we didn't damage the propellers, and we were not able to affect the situation. The icebreaker, they ran into a big packed piece of packed ice, and within half a minute the speed was down from 9 knots to 0 knots. It happened really quickly, and every vessel that is being assisted by an icebreaker must be prepared for this. That's why we have the icebreakers, to assist us, and we should always be prepared on board the assisted vessels to do quick maneuvers. It's like one captain said, you have to have one hand on the throttle and the other hand on the wheel, and when something happens, you act.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting insight to Sten, Niklas, or Hasse. Do you have any experience to share with icebreaker assistance and this kind of what Thomas described and Hasse described, that sometimes it's a risk that if we follow blindly, and it can be a risk that if we don't follow at all and we do our own thing. That do you have any input on this discussion?
I can just recall a little bit from what Thomas said. I've been in a situation we didn't have an icebreaker, but we were with a German vessel. This is already 20 years ago or something. German vessel fighting, getting out from a Finnish port. We decided to do it together. Really bad, strong wind with ice pressure, really bad visibility, snowstorm, and so on. And just by working together, we managed to get through, because the icebreakers were really busy that night, and it would have been a long wait. And for me, it was, 100% clear. One got stuck in ice, the other one following in the track should make sure that you were at safe distance. And then I don't know how many times you get out of the track, cut loose the other vessel, and then took the lead again. And then we were equally strong ships, so we could just one at the lead at the time, and then when that one got stuck, the other one broke loose the other one. But it was really tricky. I can still remember that, to make sure that you went too far away, because then you came to a situation where both probably got stuck. But at the same time, you needed to keep up the safe distance. So either you could stop your vessel, or then you have time to get out of the ice track and get on the side. But for me, there was never anything like any doubt. Of course, the vessel behind must make sure that you are on a safe distance.
And if when I listen to you, it sounds that it's very clear that you had a very good communication and clear goal and what you are going to establish and how you're going to cooperate in this situation.
Of course, yes. Keep the radio on a free channel open at all times, and straight away inform the vessel behind when you feel that now the speed is slowing down. There is actually new, it's not new anymore, but now when you have IAS, you get the vessel behind can follow the vessel ahead with your IAS, so you can actually see straight away when the speed is going down. That you couldn't see. Probably not so easy at that time. You had radar that you plotted the other vessel, but whether you get information quick enough about the other vessel speed, I don't know. Today, I feel it's better with the new IAS system, where you get straight away, you see when speed is going down. You can follow the other vessel with that.
Yeah, and you don't lose your plots in the small ice walls and
no.
Thomas, what is your view in your case? Was it a question of the third vessel being too close or reacting too slowly?
Hasse said they were too close. They were of it was a ship with a superstructure in the stern, and they had a radar distance to us of 2 cables, which means that that vessel was over 100 meters long. So they had basically between their bow and our stern, there was approximately 1.5 cables. So that distance as well, and the speed was about 9 to 10 knots. So
did they lack the experience, or were they just stubborn?
Well, no, they did what they were asked to do by the icebreaker, but I would say without experience to go full astern on your engine, you lose your maneuverability, and when you then try to get out of the ice, of the track or the free channel, you don't have maneuverability and you just go straight ahead. So my personal opinion in this was also that there was a lack of experience on the vessel that we had behind us.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I think we're in kind of a luxury position that I see the time is running, that we have an interesting discussion going on and kind of an open table. Just the two last short things that we would like to touch upon. The first one, what is your view how the industry overall could improve winter navigation and operations in cold climate or freezing temperatures? If you, Thomas, go first. And
now you give a tricky question. In my opinion, the cooperation between Sweden and Finland with the icebreakers and then also the new press release a week or two ago about further development of designing new icebreakers for this area. I mean, this has proven to be working well, and all icebreakers here in Scandinavia are doing a good job. So my point of view would be to again sell this knowledge, and let's try to expand that and let that be our strong side in the maritime business.
So from local to more global.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you. Sten, Niklas, do you have any take on this? What the industry could do and improve?
Well, I think it's quite a broad question, because if you are trading in icy conditions and up in the north, you really need to let's say consider many actors in this navigation. For instance, we are using a service from the Meteorological Institute, FME, from Ilmanet, and they have really good tailor-made services just for ice navigation, and you can do the forecasting and so on. And so I think there are many different actors who are involved in this. And as Thomas said, as long as we can, let's say, develop and cooperate, I think we can keep the service and industry moving ahead, which is important.
Thank you.
It doesn't need to be so complicated when you build ships. It's easy. There's quite simple measures where you can avoid expensive damages. Hasse talked about a damaged rudder. They reversed in ice, and the rudder was damaged. It's very easy to forget when you have a lot of things that you consider when you navigate in ice. I was on a ship where you had a switch and the rudder was in winter mode. So as soon as your engine worked astern, the rudder went midships. And I can't remember how much that cost, but it's a question about the switch and of course a little bit more behind that, but it's not very expensive equipment or compared with a damaged rudder. So when you build your ships for going in ice, then, and I'm sure for quite some cheap money, you can make it safer to operate.
Thank you, Niklas. And Hasse, do you have some industry advice?
I don't know if I have an industry advice as such, but I would say that the Polar Code brings with it quite a lot of sharing of experience through all kinds of organizations, PAME, ICS, Transport Canada, all of those contribute with the instructions and whatever. So through that, I think we will see an improvement in especially the polar areas. In a way, it's sad that the Baltic was not included in the polar area, but because now it's kind of a bit on the side, and also from both views, the experience shared in these polar code forums is perhaps not very well taken on board here, and vice versa. And also the experience that you gain in the Baltic is not reckoned in the polar code. But yeah, I think that will to some extent force improvement as well.
Okay, thank you. Collaboration through the international bodies and the collaboration possibilities.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think I would like to hand the mic to Johanna. Do we have lots of questions in the chat for the panel? So I think, Johanna, you're muted.
Sorry, hope you can hear me now. Not a lot of comments or questions, but one comment we got, and I'm going to read it for you. It is one of our listeners that commented that we have actually different types of ice in Baltic, the Arctic and the Antarctic areas. My experience as officer and master of 15 years or more in the Baltic did not much really help me down in Antarctica or the Greenland ice. It's a different problem with growlers and katabatic winds with poor or even no ice radars. In the Baltic, you have an ice field, the other areas open ice and multi-year hard ice. In the future, need to get the officers to specialize or get the area information better. It was a long comment, but it was a great one, I think.
Yeah, I would say that it's true that the ice is different. There are similarities, and you can, of course, use the experience from the Baltic in the polar to some extent. At least you have more experience if you are born here in Finland than somebody born in Central Africa. Hands-on experience. But yes, you have to take into consideration the local ice conditions. Remains to be seen if we in the Arctic will see only 1 year ice in the future, but that's another story.
Okay, I would like to challenge or ask you, Sten, a little bit. I think you are familiar with the icebergs and growlers around Newfoundland, tail of the bank. Any experience you'd like to share from that area? I think it's close to this comment that it's different, and it especially poor visibility, nighttime, some swell, wind waves, and you have mixed with growlers. It's impossible to see. Anything you would like to share on that perspective?
There are navigation warnings, of course, from the American side and Canada and so on, where you have the iceberg areas clearly marked on charts, and those areas, of course, you need to avoid. And I think many ocean-going ships today are using different weather routing services, etc. And of course, these iceberg warning areas are let's say, automatically included. So I think that most officers and captains are aware of this. And I remember clearly one instance where we approach to Halifax, Canada, and about 12 hours before we passed the so-called St. Lawrence Deep Channel coming out from Bay of St. Lawrence, and it was very dense ice, but very loose pieces of ice, and with a regular cargo ro-ro vessel there, we passed through without any problem. But you have to be careful, of course, and go slow and take it easy.
Yeah, thank you. I think the last sentence in the comment is that in the future need to get the officers to specialize or get the area information better. What is the panel's view? Do you think the expedition cruises, for example, are going to get so popular that we are going to see both in the north and south better information services? I think the situation today is that in what we are discussing and the big major global trade lanes, they're well informed and there's a big interest, like Sten mentioned, the Canadian and American services. Then we have the European, then we have the Scandinavian, the Nordic. But what do you think? Are we going to get better area information, or how do you perceive this expedition, the polar expedition cruise industry? Do you think that would be something that the information and infrastructure in that respect will improve?
I can see that it will improve, because now we talk about companies that really need new areas to go to, and they work really hard on safety. And the other thing is that they cannot, for their business, afford any accidents. And I think that they will work hard. Where it's going, I cannot say at the moment, and I haven't been there myself, so I can't say. But what I know is that these companies, they are working really safely and really putting all in to make it safe for the ships and passengers to, and the crew to be there.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas.
We have taken two ships along the northeast passage, Haga and Viki, when they were built, and then we have regularly been up to Sabetta and also to Baffin Island. And I would say that the ice information is pretty good these days. I think where we might lack a bit of information, and which is a danger, is growlers and multi-year ice, which is not yet so well identified through the ice service providers, but they are apparently working on their methodology all the time. So yes, it will improve. It's relatively good already, both on the Russian and Canadian side.
Okay, thank you. That's comforting to hear that it's improving on both sides, east and west. We are unfortunately approaching the point that we are going to wrap up our pleasant webinar. Are there any last comments or wishes or questions that the panelists would like to bring forward? I think we reach total agreement here. Thank you so much, Johanna, for organizing the webinar and the technical side, and I would like to thank on my and my company's Alandia's behalf all the panelists for your time and valuable contribution. Thank you so much.
Also, thank you, and I will also make a comment that Thomas mentioned that sharing knowledge is important, that we learn and also can take it to the next generation. And I'm at least a firm believer that this is a really great way, sharing one's experiences, so everybody can learn. I think that's great. So I will thank you very much, all panelists, and also Marty that moderate this panel, and also our viewers. I hope to see you all in next lesson learned webinar also. So thank you much for today.
one very last thing. There's one more question in the chat, and feel free to post more. We will come back to you. We have noted your question, and we will come back to you with an answer. Thank you very much for your contribution also from our participants. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.